This is my Assessment 2 presentation task for the field study, and it tells us to present a short talk on an issue related to the field study for 10 minutes. And the issue that I have chosen is poverty and justice. I wanted to share with you a story that we had over in Papua New Guinea. When I arrived, we were able to go to the hospitals over in Wewak. And as I walked in, we had the opportunity, a group of us, to go into the maternity wards with the women. And as we're walking through on the way to visit these women, I noticed all of these cracked floors and all these curtains ripped and all of this 80s looking equipment to treat these women. Most of the people in the hospital looked really, really sad and quiet and just despondent. And when Miriam and we went over to a group of women to talk with them and to pray with them, but as I was asking them questions and trying to figure out what was going on, who they are, how they're doing, they were very despondent and very fearful and quiet. Like they didn't trust us at all. And I didn't understand why. I understood that there was a language barrier there, but I didn't know why that I could sense fear. But I asked one lady if I could pray for her, and she said, yeah, sure. So I put my hand on her. But as I started to pray, God showed me a vision of this man holding up a chair and shouting at her. And I realized that it was her husband. As I'm praying, God is showing me this. And he was shouting and being really aggressive towards her. And God showed me the pain that this woman that I was praying for had gone through. And that God had shown me that these women have suffered such abuse. And that the reason why they're in the hospital is not only because they're pregnant and it was a maternity ward, but they're actually trying to escape the poverty and the injustice faced with their husbands. And it just makes me realize how lucky we are to be in Australia because of what these women have to go through, and that we get luxury in life. So that's why I've chosen poverty and injustice. The potential causes to this issue of poverty would be a lack of resources, such as government funding and appropriate programs to meet the urgent needs of the local community. This prevents them from receiving any improvement of housing, buildings, appropriate medical supplies, because without enough resources, without enough government funding, nothing can be done. For example, we visited this really remote village in, I think it was Port Moresby. Yeah, it was Port Moresby. We got taken on a journey to this village that we got to go to, and just looking around, there was rubbish everywhere. They were renovating, and it was just shocking. Like, the state of it was terrible. I noticed the kids had like scar circles on all of their legs, and I asked one of the locals, like, why do the children have this? What's going on? And she said there's only one fountain. There was only one washing fountain that the entire village shared from. So all of these children had got scabies pretty much from using this one drinking and washing fountain. The injustice of this situation could improve if the government of Port Moresby invested in resources such as fresh washing facilities for these families. But without the money, without the resources, there's going to be no improvement made. So there also needs to be an awareness as well of the situation, and there needs to be an open discussion and people with the resources over in developed countries and nations. They need to be willing to provide the opportunities and the money and the resources over to these countries because they can't afford it. Gender inequality is another major cause of injustice among women. Port Moresby is a very male-dominated country. Most of the prayer requests that I received were from women that their husbands were womanizers, or to pray for spiritual protection over the family against their husband's abuse. The reason for this issue is because of cultural norms. It is socially acceptable for women to be seen as lower than men in Papua New Guinea, and because of this, men are seen as the dominant provider within the family. This prevents women from leading lives according to their needs and interests. See, there is a very prominent thing amongst Papua New Guinea. There's a lot of gangs and gang violence that's seen in the outer suburbs and communities, and women are just pretty much the children bearers and the caretakers of the house. And as I've been reading in the Searching for Paradise book, it actually talks about families actually set up in villages arranged marriages. So in some villages, they don't even get a choice who they want to marry. For instance, there was a guy, an article here, and it talks about a man having to marry, their family had set up an arranged marriage, and it says that Charles was torn. He was accustomed to different ways now, and he did not feel attracted to this girl. However, he wanted to honour his parents and didn't want to oppose them. He began to pray about the matter, and it shows you like the picture in there of like the family, and so there's arranged marriages as common as well. But the way to address gender inequality would be education. I think education is one of the most crucial and important ways of fixing this matter. Educating children on equal rights that men and women have leads to long, healthy lives, and they can have a successful future and decrease the risk of violence. Education increases knowledge and gives men and women the skills required for further job opportunities. Justice and fair treatment of women should be the cultural norm, and implementing education reduces gender inequality. See, it has to start from the bottom going up. It can't start by educating the families at the top, the elderly, but it has to start with the children through primary school and through high school, and teaching gender equality, and that will bring about justice. In conclusion, there is so much potential for these women in the hospital and the local communities to grow into their potential. But the issue of poverty and justice is really prominent within Port Moresby and the rest of Papua New Guinea. There are a number of causes which contributes to poverty, such as a lack of resources, a lack of government funding, and gender inequality, which contributes to injustice. The opportunities to address this issue would be government funding and an education to bring about awareness of gender inequality to bring justice. And this would reduce the risk of the issues that are continuing to oppress and bring about poverty within the communities.